This is a Kiriko guide. I'm going to show you everything you need to know to get started with this character. I'm a top 500 support player, so I have a pretty good idea of how to play support, and let's get right into it. So let's start with abilities. First, we have the primary fire and secondary fire. The primary fire are these tags, and these will heal your target for 13 HP each, and they get thrown 2 at a time minimum. Also, it's important to know that these tags stick to your target. But if your target is full HP, then the tag will pass through them, and if there's someone on the other side of them, it will heal them. Now, the tags are physical projectiles, and if they touch the target, they will heal them, even if you throw them where you're not aiming on someone and they're blue. If they still hit someone, they will stick on anyway, so you don't need to lock on to them. But if you are locked on, they will actually hone in on your target and follow them, and no matter what, reach them. So during normal gameplay, you would have to actually aim around while throwing these in order to heal multiple people, so like this, which makes it a little more conducive to mouse and keyboard players, but not the end of the world. Now, it's important to know that some of this can be adjusted in the options. If you go to Controls, change Hero, and go to Kiriko, you can go down here, and I don't know how to say the word, OW2. You can turn the sensitivity down, so the sensitivity for them locking on, which you, I don't know, probably wouldn't want to do. Maybe you would, but I wouldn't see why. You can also adjust an ability that we're going to get to later, the Swift Step. And this other one is something I personally like, is defaults, the toggle healing, OW2 toggle, whatever, it defaults to on. I prefer having it off. And what that does is makes it so I have to hold my primary fire in order to keep doing this. And if I let go, it'll stop throwing them, which I personally prefer because I may want to just stop to throw my other attack, my secondary fire, in the middle without having to click again, and I feel like the toggle can just get messy and confusing. So now we need to get into a little bit of the nitty-gritty with these heal tags. So how much HP do they heal? What's the HP per second? Those types of numbers. Well, the way that this works is that she has, if I turn the UI on, you'll see at the bottom right, she has 10 tags. And after she throws them all, it takes a moment to reload. Well, the timings on this are it takes 1 second to throw all 10, and it takes half of a second to reload them. And since the tags heal 13 HP each, what this effectively means is in the burst, this burst will heal 130 HP. But because of the reload, the effective healing in the long run is 86.67 HP per second, because the reload slows you down that much long run. But in that one burst, that's 130 HP. So 130 HP burst, actual effective healing 86.67 if you just continually hold it, and what's like the overtime, just continuous. And before we move on, I want to add a little disclaimer in here. So I've tested this speed of the heals multiple times using video editing software, trying to figure out the exact timings of these things. And I've ran multiple tests since recording that last part, and I've gotten variable numbers between, I think it was 81 and 86, but everything seemed to read 80 to 86, basically, so I think it might be 81, actually. But the thing is there's like the Overwatch fandom, and it said something in the 70s, and I could not replicate that. That was one thing I absolutely could not replicate. In every test I did, it was at least 81. But just take it with a grain of salt, because I feel uncertain just because another place said something different. But again, all the actual tests I did of looking at timestamps and then going through over like a larger sample to try to get an estimate came up to 81 on the last test that I did. So I'm actually thinking it was 81 instead of 86, but I'm pretty sure it's more than 80. I just want to guys let you know some like back end data of what was going on with, you know, math and things, different things with trying to figure out the HPS of the OW2 tags. And the last thing we need to know about the healing tags is how they change during Kiriko's ultimate, which we'll cover her ultimate in just a second. But when Kiriko uses her ultimate, her attack speed and reload speed are increased by 50%. So if she does this, everything goes faster. Now, 50% faster would make you naturally want to think that it's 1.5 times more healing per second, but the math actually does not come out like that. It's even better than that. So the reality is it's going to heal 173.3 HP every second as a continuous, you know, including the reload. And the reason for that is because the reload also gets halved, and I could get down to the nitty-gritty with the math, but, you know, instead of 1 second for 130, it's 0.5. Instead of 0.5 for real, it's 0.25, so then you get 0.75 You can multiply that by 483 seconds. That's then it does 130 per burst, and that's 520. You divide that, and it all comes up to 173.3 healing per second as a continuous. And that, again, that also means that just the one burst during her ultimate will heal 130 HP, but over half of a second instead of over 1 second. So, yeah, that's Kiriko's healing during her ult. It's actually a ton of healing, comparable with Ana during Ana after she throws a healing nade on someone to boost their healing by 50%. And if you combo this in Ana nade, then it just gets insane. Now let's talk about Kiriko's secondary fire, which is her kunais. Now this is on launch probably the absolute strongest part of Kiriko. These do 40 damage, but headshots do triple damage. So headshots do 120 damage, which means you either need a headshot and 2 body shots to kill a target if they're not being healed. For most targets in this game, most people have 200 HP. Or you get 2 headshots and they're dead. Now these fire at a rate of 1 kunai every 0.55 seconds, which means if you hit 2 headshots, you can eliminate a target in 1.1 seconds. That's what makes Kiriko so strong at high level play, because when people can actually aim really good, they just annihilate people with these kunai. Now it's effectively 218 damage per second with headshots, and it's 72.72 damage per second with body shots. But it's a little more nuanced than that because there's a reload. So if I turn the UI back on, you'll see at the bottom right, I have 12 kunais. And there's a reload at the end, and that reload takes, I think it was right around 1 second. I actually looked it up. It was 1 second. So it's a 1 second reload at the end. And so when you do the math on that, in the long run of shooting through reloads and non-stop shooting, then she'll do 200 damage per second with headshots and 66 damage per second with body shots. Although it's very unlikely that you'll be shooting continuously for more than one, clip, which would be 12 kunais. Before we move on from the kunais, you need to know about what are they like during her ultimate ability. Because again, ultimate ability reduces everything by 50%, which effectively doubles it. And it's weird math because reloads get reduced. So, baseline damage per second during her ultimate is 436 for headshots and 145 damage per second with body shots. But that's not including the reloads. So in the burst, it will be those numbers. 436 head, 145 body. But if you include the time of the reload, then it comes down some. Then you get 129, effectively 130 damage per second with body shots. And then 389 damage per second with headshots. Now, again, this would be during her ultimate where she fires like this. And you're much more likely to actually run into these numbers during your ultimate because you're going through your kunai so fast and you're actually reloading. Now, again, these damage per second numbers only really matter if you hit 100% of your shots, which you will not. Nobody will. Next up is the Protection Suzu, and this gives 50 HP to the targets and an AoE at the end, and it gives them 1 second of invulnerability. And this ability also cleanses different things. So it will cleanse the Biotic Grenade, which is anti-heal. It'll cleanse Blizzard. It'll cleanse a bunch of stuff, even Earth Shatter. But there are some things that can't be cleansed, like Reinhardt's Charge. If he's already pinned someone with a charge, you can't get him out of it. Junkrat's Steel Trap. Roadhog's Hook. If he's already hooked them when you press it, you can't reactively put it on them after they got hooked. And then Sigma's Gravitic Flux cannot be cleansed. And you cannot cleanse to walk out of a Zarya ult, Graviton Surge. So those are the ones I'm aware of that you cannot, cleanse or get out of. But the cleanse is a very powerful ability, and in a pinch, it can also be a quick 50 HP self-heal, which is could make the difference between life and death, on top of the invulnerability, which you can use at just the right time to protect yourself. Now, this thing has a 14-second cooldown. I'm only throwing it fast because I'm in a custom game mode with reduced cooldowns. But yeah, this is a 14-second cooldown for this ability. And the last thing that you need to know about Protection Suzu is that it actually has a knockback effect on enemies, so you can in fact boop enemies off the map and get kill credit as Kiriko. So, like this. So that is a thing. That's like a hidden thing in her ability that people might not realize. but you definitely could win games just by knowing that. Kiriko's next ability is called Swift Step, and what that effectively does is teleports her to a target with a 7-second cooldown. Now, this will actually cleanse her of most negative effects, but not all. There's inconsistencies. It'll cleanse her of the anti-heal from Junker Queen's ult, but it won't cleanse her from anti-nade from Ana, as an example. And also, it will drop some projectiles on others. It'll drop a sonic arrow, for example. But if you're hit with a pulse bomb or a sticky grenade, those will stick with you. And I think that was intentional, I would assume, because they wanted the counterplay of if you got stuck and you teleport to someone, then you blow them up with you, basically. So you need to, like, you know, be aware. It adds an element of skill to it and awareness, which I think is kind of cool. But yeah, so 7-second cooldown, brief invulnerability at the end of it, which that brief vulnerability you could actually use to protect yourself. And the specific example I think of above all else is a Diva Bomb. So your Diva Bomb, you have an ally right next to you, but you are going to die. And even if you teleport to them, you're going to die. But if you time it right when the bomb explodes, you don't die because you were invulnerable. So that's Swift Step. It can be done through walls. So you can actually go like that. And it has a maximum range of 35 meters, which to help you visualize 35 meters, I'm going to back up till we can't see this anymore. There we go. So this is right around 35 meters, which is very, very far. And also there's a very brief cast for this that can be interrupted, which is maybe like a 1/10 of a second or something like that. So if it gets interrupted, it's more of a coincidence than someone actually trying to do it. All right, we got 2 more abilities, passive abilities, and then we'll talk about the ultimate. So she has wall climb. To do a wall climb, you run at a wall and hold the jump button, and she will climb. She can only climb that high, just like Hanzo and Genji. But she has a wall climb, so be aware because it can be pretty game-changing to be aware that you have your wall climb. The other one is the standard support thing. She just has automatically heal over time on the right. So, you know, if you're out of combat for long enough, you'll just heal over time. All right, now it's time to talk about Kiriko's ultimate ability. This one's called Kitsune Rush, and it reduces your reload speed by 50%. It increases your attack speed by 50%. It increases your move speed by 50%. And it reduces your cooldowns by 3x. So if you have a 9-second cooldown on an ability, it's only going to be a 3-second cooldown inside of this ultimate ability. Now, this ultimate ability will throw out this blue fox, or pink-looking, red-looking for the enemy, and it will follow a path and leave behind it a path. So it looks like this. And if I go to the edge, you'll see it'll actually drop down and then continue the path. So it can only drop down, it can't go up. If it hits a wall, it'll disappear. And a wall can also include a Mei wall. And apparently, even Mei's cryo freeze could technically block it if you aimed right at the cryo freeze. And that could be even an ally's cryo freeze. Could apparently block it is what I've read, but I haven't seen it myself. But I'll just believe it. It sounds reasonable enough to me. Now, some interesting nuance with this. You see that it goes down there. Well, what actually happens is different than the visual. So they almost want you to believe that the fox is making the path. But from my testing, and I could be wrong, but I don't think I am, the fox is purely visual. In reality, it's just creating a line. And the second it gets over the ledge, it goes straight down at a 90-degree angle and continues. So it's not like the fox where he's bouncing down. It literally just makes hard angles, 90-degree angles. It goes straight down, whatever. And the reason that's relevant is because it can't cover a gap because of that. It'll go down if it can, and then it'll stop into a wall. But more importantly, if going down is going to lead to a death plane, which is like, you know, off the map, like over, I can't aim from third person, over there. If it's going to go off the map, then even if like you line it up to where it could bounce over the gap, that's just not how it's going to work. I'll show you what I mean. So here's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. So you would think maybe it could bounce down to there if it was the fox, right? Because the fox would actually land down there based on his animation. But that's not what happens. So if I go here and I use it, it will go and just disappear immediately. And the reason it disappeared immediately is right here, this like the, whatever you call it, pixel almost, that it went over the ledge. The next ground it had contact with after this was a death plane. So it just cuts. It doesn't matter that it doesn't bounce over something. The very next thing, 90-degree angle down, was death. So it deletes it, basically. So that's important to know. You can't just bounce it over a ledge if there's a death plane between them. It doesn't do that. Now, there's some important notes to know about this. So, like Bob, if you know Bob is from Ash's ultimate ability, he receives benefits, but other things don't. Like Torbjorn's turret does not. Riptire doesn't get affected by it. There's other things like beam weapons will work with it. So Zarya's Tesla cannon will work with it. I haven't tested Moira's Coalescence. I would hope it does, though. And then it also works abilities like a Storm Arrows and Whole Hog. Once I've Rate of Fire. I'm around reading this from the fandom. I'll actually link you guys the fandom in the bottom to see what, just adding what they have to say on top of what I've discovered on my own. And then there's inconsistencies according to them, where some abilities with charges like Blink, Concussion Mine, and Fire Strike will receive the cooldown, but other ones like Zarya's Particle Barrier, Projected Barrier, and Symmetra's Sentry Turret just don't receive the cooldown reduction, even though they're also charged abilities with charges. And there's also inconsistencies. Baptiste's Immortality Field does not receive a cooldown reduction, but Moira's Biotic Orb does. So there's inconsistencies with it. I don't know if they're intentional or not. But yeah, so there are just some random inconsistency with it. And again, I was reading some of that right there from the Overwatch fandom, and I will link that in the description of this video. All right, one last thing about all the abilities, nuance of the abilities. There's something I was curious about, and it actually is in fact true. So these Ofudas, the healing Ofudas, they have a max range of 35 meters, which would be right here. And that is the maximum range at which they will lock on. But the reality is they travel much further than 35 meters. They travel, I'm not exactly sure, it looks like 70 meters maybe. But you can't lock onto a target from that far. But it actually will heal from that far. If the visual is hitting them, they're still active and will actually heal. Now, the reason why this is actually important at a higher level, technicality thing, is if you are playing on a map where you have, say, a sniper, like a Widowmaker, or somebody who's really far away, and they need healing, and you don't have an Ana, you actually can heal them from across the map. You just have to throw these at them, and they have to try to, get as many of them as they can to hit them. So if you're, like, all the way over here fighting, and your Widow's like, I need healing, you can look at them and throw them, and the Widow can just wait a minute, and then get them all, and be healed, and you're just good. So you could literally, if you, at a higher level, have that coordination and know this about this ability, and work with that, then you can just throw all of them and then get back to what you're doing, and the Widow will take care of the rest and catch a bunch of them and be healed and go back to what they were doing. So that's a really cool feature that I'm actually excited about. I think that'll add a lot to in higher level situations. That's really freaking cool. All right, so that covers everything about the abilities and the technicalities of how they work. That was really tough to get through, but okay. So if you're still with me here in this video, let's go ahead and talk now about how to play Kiriko. How do you actually make all this happen in an actual comp? Now, there are some things that I've realized after playing this character, is that she fills a very similar role as Moira. She actually plays very similar to a Moira, and the big reason for that is that her swift step allows her to play in weird positions just like Moira, and then just get out of those positions just like Fade does for you. But obviously there's differences. Kiriko's way better than Moira at a high level just because of the kunai. The kunai is completely busted. But you can see what I mean about similar playstyle to Moira, where you're doing a lot of damage and you're able to get in weird positions and do damage, but you're also able to heal and heal from weird positions and then just get out and stuff. So there's crossover, but she's definitely her own character with her own, playstyle. But you'll find yourself, I found myself at least, in a lot of scenarios where I felt like I was Moira. I was in a certain spot healing, and I'm just like, wow, literally the only other character I would ever do this with would be Moira, where I'd be in this position doing this from this angle and whatever. So you'll definitely feel some similarities. All right, let's look at some gameplay footage while I talk. So generally speaking, Kiriko can kind of just do anything because she has damage. She has so much damage that at a high level, she can play like a DPS, and she can play more aggressive than almost any DPS because she can teleport out instantly, and that allows her to just get in these crazy positions, risk everything, and then just get out, basically. Assuming, you're fighting people who can't one-tap Kiriko, because you still gotta watch out for getting one-tap like Sojourn or something like that. You don't want to just get suddenly exploded. But Kiriko can play a lot looser than maybe all of the other supports. Maybe Lucio would be the only other one that's even close, where she can just go in and be wherever she wants. She can be out in the open or off to the side or get on the opposite side of a doorway where she's all by herself. No matter where Kiriko ends up, she's basically safe because her movement ability is so unbelievably powerful. One of the hardest things to remember as Kiriko is to heal, because she's such a good DPS that you'll find yourself trying to do damage more than you're healing, and it's hard to remember that Kiriko actually has some of the highest healing in the entire game, and there are times where you're going to be tempted to try to kill the enemy in order to decrease the damage output your team's receiving. But really, in a lot of scenarios, you need to just heal, especially at lower range. You need to just heal because that damage output is not guaranteed. If you miss 3 shots instead of healing and you lose your tank, well then, it's such a high risk versus the low risk play, which is to just throw the OW2 tags, or whatever they were called, at your teammates. And healing as Kiriko is not really that hard, at least on PC. Controller is going to be a little bit tough because you just have to whip around so much. But as a PC player, mouse and keyboard, it's really pretty easy to alternate heals between everyone and keep everyone up. And she just does so much healing that you can really heal people through so much. I mean, I think she just heals a ton. She just heals a ton, so don't be tempted to do damage when you really need to heal. Unless you're at like a top 500 level, which most of you are not going to be there. But if you are at a top 500 level and you feel really guaranteed that you're going to hit 2 headshots in a row, otherwise, you really need to focus on the heal. There's going to be problems with Kiriko. It's going to be a meme like Moira. I can see it now. I mean, I'll eat my words if I'm wrong, but I can see it now where there's going to be, on the Overwatch groups on Facebook, they're going to be constantly posting memes about Kirikos who don't heal. And that's totally going to be a thing. And that would be fine if you're guaranteed to hit your shots, but really, healing as big as her, you know, as much as you're tempted to not heal, just do it. Just heal and only do damage when there's not something serious to heal. Also, I don't know, secret technique of Kiriko is you can actually get more output than standard if you combine your damage with your healing. What I mean by that is you can throw a kunai while throwing the tags. So during the reload of the tags, you can actually throw a kunai and it won't interrupt the reload of the tags, but it'll just let you get a free kunai throw out in the middle. So you can throw the tags, and then kunai, and then throw the tags, and then kunai, and then throw the tags. And that will allow you to get some DPS output without interrupting your HPS, HP5 at all. So that is a really important high-level tip for Kiriko that should be able to help you guys out. I do it in my gameplay as Kiriko, and I'm trying to get better and better about making it a habit to where realistically be more like something like this. You know, you're looking at somebody and like that. Also, keep in mind that Kiriko, more so than any of the other characters, has the ability to basically play like an actual ninja, which is, you know, not ironic because the style that they gave her with everything. But after a team fight, if you want, it's totally viable, especially with your ult, to set yourself up in a position where you're hiding and then either ambush someone or throw your ult or something from behind and then just teleport out if you need to. I've done it in games before, so something like, say, Eichenwald second point like this, and you can actually jump up, in case you didn't know, by the way, pro tip here, you can jump on this brick, jump on that, and get up here. You could be up in a place like this, and if they don't see you, especially at low ranks, and they don't see you and they get out and your team's fighting right there, you could drop from behind and then throw this here and then just, you know, fight. And the second that you feel like you're in danger, you would teleport out to your team, but you'd be able to catch them off guard, get them to turn around, then your team runs into them. There's a speed boost, there's a damage boost, it's chaos. She has a lot of potential to play like that because her teleport is so strong. As for the cleanse, it's hard to really give tips on it. The cleanse is, you're just going to have to trial and error, get used to it. You're going to have to, because it really comes down to the goal with the cleanse, or specifically it's called the protection suzu, is to see something coming and then, you know, negate it with it, because it's an invuln and it's a CC immunity. And that's something that there's really no one-size-fits-all tip to make you better at that. You're just going to have to play the game and be consciously thinking about it when you're playing. Even if that messes up your gameplay, you want to consciously be thinking about when you could do or when you could have done it during your games until it actually starts happening. That's an overall tip that I want to give for just a second here for any character in a video game like this, which is, in order to get good at something that seems not possible, the only way to do it is to actively think about it, and then the more you think about it during matches, the quicker you'll get to a point where you actually kind of try to do it and you just totally mess it up. But that's the first step. And you do it and you're like, oh, damage. Oh, I timed it wrong, whatever. And that's good. Okay, and you do it. And the next time you do it again, you mess it up again. You mess it up again, and then you get it right, and then you mess it up, and then you get it right. And before you know it, then it's second nature. And then suddenly you've gotten to a point where whenever you see Ryan use Earth Shatter, you're just like, bam. And nobody takes damage. Nobody gets stunned. Or, or whatever, something like that. That's generally for every character. That's how to learn it. But for her, Invuln, the Protection Suzu, it's especially going to be like that. It's just going to be trial and error. Try to get yourself to throw it out at certain scenarios, and eventually you'll get the muscle memory for hopefully every scenario. Also, don't forget about the wall climb. It can definitely help you get into positions like the one I talked about just earlier, where you could, between team fights, go somewhere, climb somewhere, and then wait for them to fight your team, and then do something like I talked about, teleport out, whatever, or something like that. Her ability to wall climb allows her to get in ambush positions and try to just two-tap someone, use her ult, and then teleport out, set up the position, do stuff like that. And talking about her ult, so with her ult, she has certain maps she's going to be stronger on than others. That's just how it's going to be for every character generally. But the ideal scenario to use her ult, you can use it in a lot of different places, in a lot of different ways, but one of the best case scenarios is something like Eichenwald's second point, where you're literally on a path, and maybe they're playing high ground and it's not really good. But if you're ever in a scenario where they're on the ground with you and your team's all here and they're all just here, like most of them at least, then you just and they're screwed. They're just totally screwed and you just run them over. Yeah. Also, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, the ult actually persists for 2 seconds after leaving the ground of it. And you can use that. So you could literally just, even in a small scenario, you could just use it and have one little spot of it just for that little bit of movement speed and damage. You can just stand on it while doing it. It's insanely OP. It's actually such a good ult. It's crazy. Also about that, all the effects of the ult go away when it runs out of time. Even if you just like, you tapped it and you got off and got that 2 seconds. If it ends, it just cancels immediately. It doesn't matter. Those 2 seconds don't matter. It's just gone when it's gone, whether you're on or off. But regardless of everything that I've set up until now, generally speaking, in most scenarios, as Kiriko, your best position to play is going to be more of a standard support position. You generally hang behind your team. Life's not always that simple, though. The game's not always that simple, but like generally in the most on-paper scenario, you play back, you're just healing them, you're throwing kunais over their shoulders at the enemies, and just playing safe, giving consistent heals, trying not to let people die, and then throwing down your ult when the time is appropriate. And one last thing about Kiriko, she actually can be really funny for contesting the payload because she can just disappear in the blink of an eye with her teleportation. So she's actually one of the funny ones to try to contest a payload and then just disappear. But again, don't do that unless you have someone you can teleport to. They have to be within 35 meters for the teleport. But if there is someone like that, then you could contest a payload until they notice you or almost kill you and then disappear suddenly. That is a thing. At lower level, that'll be a lot more viable than higher level. But at higher level, people will be better about doing it too, so it just depends. But that's definitely she's a character that could be doing that in certain niche scenarios. It would be funny to eat up like 5, 10, 15 seconds off of someone's time bank. So beware, that is an option, even if it's just a silly, dangerous option. That it's not for all situations, but be aware that could be a thing in certain situations. And that's everything you need to know about Kiriko. That'll be enough to get you started. There's your numbers. There's the general play style for her and stuff. At some point in the future, I may come back with a very advanced, tips and tricks guide for her as I play her more and as the weeks go on and stuff. And there's just more discovered about the nuances and stuff. But this video was like your ultimate beginner guide to how to play her, how to learn all the numbers, how all her abilities work, all the little nuances with each and every one. I hope this one helped you out. My main goal is just to help you guys learn these characters. I'm hoping to make other character guides too as time goes on here. And yeah, that's it, guys. I just hope it helped you out. Now, hopefully, you have a better idea of how to play Kiriko in Overwatch 2.